giant I've ever seen. So I'm going to trust God's word.
Aren't you afraid? We're afraid of not, sir.
I think it's the fact that you know you're meant to be significant.
You as a human being are designed as a future-oriented creature.
We just want to be impactful.
There's something that the author knows that I don't know yet.
We go where the need is greatest, to help the world's most vulnerable children. Every 60 seconds, a family gets access to clean water, a hungry child is fed, a family receives the tools to overcome poverty. We tackle poverty with solutions that last. We're on the ground when disaster strikes. We stand in solidarity with vulnerable children and their families. And in Australia, we partner with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to create positive change. You can help make it all happen.
Hi, you're part of the Connect 20 Summit. My name's Luke Weston here in New Zealand, and joining me is Mel Wade in Sydney.
Thanks, Luke. Look, today is the second in a two-part series of talks and Q&A with internationally recognised clinical psychologist Dr. Robi Sondereger, known for taking psychology from the front line to the home front.
And whether working with high-end executives or everyday families, Dr. Robi relates to people from all walks of life. I mean, the breadth of his work ranges from being an instructor for the British royal family to humanitarian ambassador, working with refugees in Middle Eastern and Central African conflict zones. Amazing.
Well, Dr. Robi combines research in clinical psychology and neuroscience with the latest industry trends. But what I love most is his approach to both personal and professional. And today it's all about the sweet spot and maintaining peak productivity. Let's welcome Dr. Robi.
Well, I hope that you are enjoying Connect 20 conference. I know that I've had a blast so far. I hope you were able to tune in yesterday as we talked about tapping into the sweet spot or the slipstream of creativity under, of course, the banner of Renaissance, the rebirth or resurgence of creativity. How can we achieve more with even less effort? Core takeaway principle was the sweet spot is between 65 and 85% in almost every aspect of our lives. If you were able to join us for the Q&A after that session, hey, it was electric. Some of the things I wrote down as we talk practicalities of applying this in our lives. If you have a 24-hour day and you sleep about 8.5 hours, well, your awake time will be 65%. However, if you sleep for more than 8.5 hours, your wake time productivity drops below 65% and you're no longer in the sweet spot. But that probably doesn't apply so much to you. Chances are you're on the other end of the spectrum. If you sleep less than 6 hours, well then your wake time will exceed 85% and you're too no longer in the slipstream of creativity. Apply it to almost anything. Apply it to the week. If you've got a 7-day week and you take 1 day or 2 days off as a weekend or as a Sabbath, once again, your work week will be 65 to 85%. It's everything. Even the Bible talks about the importance of taking a Sabbath, having a break. In fact, in the Old Testament, the penalty for breaking the Sabbath was death. But did you know in the New Testament, nothing's changed? Because if you break the Sabbath, you break yourself. So time to have a bit of reflection, a moment to ask ourselves, how am I doing? Am I burning the candle a little bit too much? Could I reduce a little bit so that I can once again tap back in to the slipstream of creativity? In psychology, we know this to be true even in financial crisis. In times like this, where we're like, oh, what if I've lost my job or I've lost my business, or what if we lose the house? And when you're in crisis and you don't know what to do, you know what you should do? Take some time off. Go on a holiday. Now, I would normally say Tahiti is your best option, but apparently flights aren't going there at the moment. But the idea of sitting back and sipping a pina colada and enjoying some, vitamin sunshine, vitamin D, which is good for your mental health and well-being as well as your bones. Look, this is great because it is when you stop, all of a sudden, ding, takes place. And you come up with these creative, these intellectually advanced ideas that you didn't previously have, you didn't conceive of. Now, chances are you already know what I'm talking about because it happens almost every day. Like when you go to bed at night and you're lying and you're just like starting to drift off, but your mind is still ticking over, so you're not quite too drowsy yet. Your brain has now just entered into what we call the alpha brainwave dominant state. Your awake time is your beta dominant state, your sleep time is your delta dominant state, and when you're just in that in-between zone is your theta state. But in alpha, your brain is still quite active, quite alert, but your body is very relaxed. And as you're just lying there thinking, that's the moment, chances are you would have experienced ding, like what a brilliant idea. Oh, I must remember, I've got to do that tomorrow. Oh, and that thing too. Like, I've got to remember. Now, I should probably write that down, but you know what, the pen is in the kitchen, and I'll remember it, but you never do. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Like, it's so frustrating in the morning. You're like, what was that thing? You had the brightest ideas when you were starting to relax. It's the principle of being well positioned. Remember? Positioning precedes the purpose, and the purpose precedes the provision. When you understand this principle, you'll understand it in terms of even sports. You can go for a workout, you can work out 7 days a week, but if you took a rest day, you'll actually build more muscle because it is in the rest day that your muscles are able to re-knit themselves and repair, and it is in the repairing that growth takes place. Or if you're a sporting person like, I don't know, like a golfer or something like that, you understand that it's not about the power. Now, if I'm playing golf, maybe you're like me, the most important thing is not the score at the end of the game. Like, does anyone know what I'm talking about? The most important thing is the tee off. Like, who can hit the ball the furthest? Okay, so that's for the people who don't play golf that often. So we all line up and it's like, this is the major competition right now. And so with all of my might, I'll whack this thing and it just kind of goes plop. But for the person who understands the principle is positioning is much more important than power. So if I've got the right position, I don't actually need to use all of that power. I can just quite casually hit the ball, and the thing soars into the stratosphere. In fact, if you are well positioned, you can hit the ball with 10% or 15% less effort, and it will go 10 to 15% further because positioning trumps power. The same is true even in academics or studying. If you're studying and you're like, okay, I've got to study for this exam, and you study, and you study to the max, you will not do as good as if you take some time out. You get some fresh air and some sunshine, some socialization, and get a great night's sleep. You'll do better on that exam than if you studied all night long. It's just a principle. If you're truly going to govern your life in a way that's so much more effective, that you can be like that sharpened axe that takes less effort to chop down the tree, well, we would do well to actually understand how it works in our brain. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture here, a portrait, if you will, because it's all about the Renaissance, the resurgence of creativity. This right here is the portrait of Stu Harris. Now, I've got the glasses. Actually, his glasses are a bit more funky than that, a bit more contemporary. Give him some hair. Okay, so this is what I see on the outside. He's probably much more handsome than that. Sorry, Stu. But look, this is what we see on the outside, but I'm assuming that Stu also has one of these on the inside, and we call it the human brain. Now, not to turn this into a biology lesson, but just a couple of things that you might want to know about the human brain. At the top of the spinal cord is what I like to refer to as the light bulb of the brain. Technically, we call it the brain stem. This does all of the things that you typically don't need to think about. So if you are breathing, you don't need to go and in and one and two and out and one and two. It just Happens automatically. When you're digesting food, you don't need to go, okay, come and push it, and then around the corner now, whoa, and down. No, it just happens automatically. When you're growing hair, you don't need to go, okay, just gonna squeeze some out. You don't have to do it. It just happens automatically. But thank God, around this part of the brain is what I like to refer to as the emotional cauliflower. Technically, it's called the limbic system. You know this part of your brain well, you use it often. This is the emotional drive center of your brain. It's also the primal drive area of your brain, so all of the cravings like food and sleep, it goes along with it. And then one more part is right at the front. We've got the frontal lobe, and right behind the forehead here, we've got what's referred to as the prefrontal cortex. Now, the reason why I'm taking the time to explain this, and chances are some of you might already be well familiar with the human brain, and others are like, hang on, I thought this was like a creative media and art kind of conference or summit. What's this got to do? This is you. If you want to be more creative, understand how this process works. Right behind the forehead here, the prefrontal cortex, this is where wisdom lives. This is your logical, rational, problem-solving, executive decision-making part of the brain. This is what separates you from the rest of the animal kingdom. This is where you contemplate not just what decisions you will make for the here and now that will affect your life, but you'll also take into consideration how your decisions will affect the lives around you. Well, at least you should, because that's called maturity. But not only will it affect the people around you, it will also affect your future self. But who knows, if we're staying up till 3 a.m. every morning, if we're getting less than 6 hours sleep because we are so emotionally passionate about the project that we're involved in, well, we're now making a decision that's going to impact my future self as early as tomorrow, where I will wake up, I'll be fatigued, I'll be surviving on coffee and sugar in order to keep me awake and keep my buzz going, and then I'm going to eventually crash. It'll turn into frayed emotions when I'm dealing with relationships. I'll step on people's toes. I'll be a bit short with my temper. It's not conducive to sustainability. We said yesterday that one thing that creative geniuses all had in common, well, some of the most executive ones, was that something wasn't quite right. Well, there's the second thing they've got in common. Creative geniuses often die young. Don't be one of these people who was a wisp with creativity but wasn't sustainable. Don't burn out. Don't OD. Don't go down that road. Exercise some wisdom so that we can stay in this game for the long term. And not just in the game, but also functioning where I don't get caught up in all sorts of other habitual patterns of behavior that are not healthy, that are unwise, or perhaps even immoral. You see, this part of the brain, it typically wakes up and serves to disadvantage us in the wee hours of the night. Let me explain it to you like this. If you're feeling hungry at around about 10 o'clock, and you're rubbing your stomach and you go down to the fridge and you open the fridge and there you see one last slice of chocolate cake. Well, there'll be a bit of a conversation you'll have with yourself. It's kind of like Fred Flintstone with the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, both of them whispering into your ear as to what you should do, like the angel saying, you don't need another slice of chocolate cake, but the devil's like, go ahead, you know you want to. That was a little bit too scary, wasn't it? Like, all right, so tone it down, dial it down, 85%. And so then you've got this, well, should I or shouldn't I? And so the angel says, look, if you eat that slice of chocolate cake, it's just going to go to your waist. But then the devil chimes in with, yeah, it's either going to go to your waist, it's going to go to waste. So just eat it already. And so now I'm like in this tug of war, literally a tug of war between these two parts of my brain. The emotional drive part of my brain that says, I want it and I want it now. And the logical part of my brain that says, yes, but it's probably not the wisest decision. Unless we are in charge of our faculties, our limbic system, our emotional brain, will win that game every single time. We, in other words, will give in to temptation. And here's why. Dr. Gordon Brune, he's come up with a really wonderful acronym. He calls it BLAST, B-L-A-S-T, and it stands for the different types of pain that our brain can experience. You see, pain is processed in the limbic system. It's not the only thing that's processed in the limbic system. The limbic system has 3 primary roles. The first role is survival, so it's a pretty important part of the brain. We can't just do a lobotomy, cut it out, get rid of it. No, it's essential for our survival. Why? Because pain is a threat to your survival, and so it's essential to compensate it with some pleasure. That's right. Pleasure and pain are processed in the same part of the brain. Now, I know that's confusing because that doesn't make sense. Like, surely pain and pleasure should be, processed in different parts of the brain, but just like the divinals sing, there's a fine line between pleasure and pain. You know this to be true every time you eat hot vindaloo curry down at the local Indian restaurant, which hopefully is opening again soon, right? What are you doing? You're eating spicy food. Why? It's painful, but because you like it. In other words, it feels good to feel bad at some absurd level, right? You know this to be true. Now, if pain is a threat to our survival, and the fastest way to overcome the pain is through some kind of pleasure, now the BLAST acronym comes into play. Because pain is not just physical pain, it's also boredom. Whenever you are bored, your brain processes it as being painful. And the same is true with loneliness, which is L. When you're lonely, it's both a precursor to depression as well as a symptom thereof. So in other words, if you're depressed, you don't typically want to socialize. But if you're socially isolated, well, you're more vulnerable to depression. A stands for agitation, any kind of anxiety, perhaps even anger. S is a no-brainer, that's stress, and T stands for tiredness. Now, people respond to these things in different ways. I know my wife and I, we're completely different. Remember, I'm one of the late-night owl people. I don't know who belongs to my tribe. So when my wife is tired and her brain says, warning, warning, like gives her the signals, I'm tired, this is painful, so we need to take a response. And what's her response? Lights out, all over Red Rover. From one moment to the next, she's in bed. Whereas for me, when my brain is like, warning, warning, pain, like I need to compensate it with some kind of pleasure. So reach for the remote control, grab Netflix, go for the ice cream, whatever it might be, let's do coffee. Like, let's wake our brain back up again because we can't have this pain. There are functional responses and there are, of course, dysfunctional responses. But if your brain is experiencing boredom, lonely, agitation, stress, or tiredness, well, you are set up more than ever to give in to temptation. This is the moment that the enemy would love to come along and just lure you into dark places where you know that you shouldn't go. But when you understand this process, well, you understand what your vulnerabilities are, what your risk factors are. You can actually take measures in advance so as to prevent this from taking place. So to have healthy mechanisms, to make some executive decisions before the temptation comes so that you've already got a response plan in place. Think of it like this. If you were a firefighter and you're hanging out at the fire station, I mean, some days it must be boring because, major fires don't happen like every other hour, right? So chances are we're playing cards, game of bridge or poker or whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden, woo, okay, whoa, this is like, okay, no drill, this is the real deal. But flip, I had such a good hand, like, okay, so when we come back, like no cheating, right, let's pick up the game where we got back. Do you notice what happens next with the fireys? There's no panic. There's no, okay, flip, there's a fire, all right, I need my hat, I need my coat, and then I need, what else do I don't know, I got my boots on, okay, let's go into the truck, and then down the pole and into the truck, and then off we go. Hang on, I forgot the address, where's the address? I've got to go back, and we've got to race up again. No one panics. Why? Because they're not governed by their limbic system. They have a process that they have logically thought of in advance, trained so that it has now become, wait for it, second nature. Please note, second nature is not human nature. Second nature is an intentional response that has been pre-developed. It's a strategy that we have developed in advance, such that when the siren, woo, man, I had such a good hand, all right, we're coming back for this game, no cheating, all right, grab my hat, grab my jacket, got my boots on. Oh, let me not forget the address. Slide down the pole, jump in the truck, and update my Facebook status. I'm cool, calm, and collected because the principle in psychology is the slower you go, the faster you get there. Yesterday, I briefly mentioned that some of us, we live in a chaotic state where our lives are like all disheveled and like, don't touch anything on my desk because I know exactly where, it looks like a bomb has gone off, but I know exactly where everything is. Just don't touch it, don't clean it up, right? I live in the chaos. The chaos is the inspiration for my creativity. And I said yesterday, actually, no. It's being well organized that is actually the birthplace of creativity. Since the theme of this conference is Renaissance, which means rebirth or resurgence of creativity, what if we were to stop and reflect and take stock and ask ourselves, what areas of my life could I, in advance, get organized, have an action plan, a response, so when next the alarm bells of temptation go off in my life, I'm actually able to recognize, well, these are my risk factors. These are kind of the times when I'm most vulnerable. And of course, that's going to be late at night when everyone else has gone to bed and I'm bored and there's nothing on Netflix because I've seen everything. And so I'm lonely because no one else is awake. I'm anxious or agitated because I've got this project due tomorrow. Needless to say, I've been working on it all day, so I'm stressed and I am tired, but thank God for the coffee. But the coffee doesn't not make you tired. It just tricks you into not being aware that you're tired, and so I'm completely set up for a fall, but not if I've got my own emergency response plan in place. Can I encourage you, 2020, let's make it a brand new year where we're not only able to tap into the slipstream of creativity, but we're able to go the distance. That just like the Apostle Paul, we're able to finish the race strong, not burn out, die out, fall away from our faith because we made poor choices somewhere along the way, all because we were governed by our animalistic brain as opposed to the brain that sets us apart. The prefrontal cortex, where wisdom lives with executive decisions. The slower we go, the faster we'll get there. Look forward to seeing you on the other side. God bless.